All right, welcome to Two Sons Podcast. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Hope all of you guys are having a great week. We officially have brand new live action Star Wars content. Always a very exciting moment for Two Sons Podcast. We're going to forgive Disney for releasing all 3 episodes at once in the middle of my playoff run when I'm insanely exhausted.
They're trying to squash us, Jay.
Dude, I was talking with Carly last night out by the fire pit. Like, I remember what it's like to be in the playoffs and to be like going through the daily process and like have my legs underneath me and be like, I'm doing this, I'm crushing this, I'm resting, I'm still on top of my stuff, like I'm a machine and I'm churning it out. I do not feel that way right now.
That makes me sad, man.
Dude, these first 5 days or 4, I think it's been 4 days, have been brutal. I've been so exhausted. But
well, how many extra shows have you done with like radio hits and other things like that?
A ton, but that's what I always do in the playoffs.
Why do you think it's different?
I'm just having a hard time getting my legs underneath me this year, but it'll eventually happen. I think part of it is just like how busy the first round in particular always gets.
Right.
But anyway.
Well, and you've been hitting it hard for months now.
That was a big part of it too. That was my theory with Carly. So like we did a lot of traveling in March, and in order to make that work, I did a bunch of extra content.
Right.
And so like while I've been in Tucson, I've basically been at playoff pace for a few months now. But I watched the first episode last night.
Wait, really quick. Jay, we need to congratulate you. On Hoops Tonight, you broke 100,000 subscribers, which is incredible.
Thank you.
I'm so incredibly proud of you, man.
I appreciate it. It's been a heck of a journey, but really, like, I'm just thankful to the fans and the listeners. Like, they just have supported us through the whole thing, and like, I'm just. It's been a crazy few years. You obviously, as someone who knew me before I started to work in this space, like I had dreams of doing something in media, but I never in a million years thought it would be like this and this fast. Like it's been crazy.
Amazing,
but I watched the first episode of Andor last night. Then I very much enjoyed it. And then I woke up this morning, I did my film session, I had a bunch of other stuff to do for work, but I finally got to get to the last 2 episodes here in the last couple of hours. And honestly, like there was a lot of hype. Mm-hmm. There were people saying greatest show of the year. I saw the phrase greatest show of the last 10 years getting thrown around. And I'm like, holy shit. Like, all right, so we're really like overselling this, you know? And I mean,
they were talking about it on NPR. I mentioned it to my father-in-law, Chris, and I was like, yeah, Jay and I are going to do a pod tomorrow. And he's like, oh yeah, Andor. And I was like, what? How do you know what Andor is? So they've even been talking about it there.
Well, it has like a lot of stuff that would appeal to people that aren't necessarily Star Wars fans. Like it really amounts to palace intrigue drama, like classic, like authoritarian, you know, fascist regime.
Right.
And here are these people, you know, fighting for the revolution from behind. It's kind of like it's a tried and true proven movie formula.
Most definitely.
That they're just rocking, and like really that's it. I mean, Carly and I were talking earlier, like just something simple like Chandrilla and the customs there. Like think about it this way. You're trying to show a wedding, okay? So you need to successfully build an entire culture from scratch, okay? Which means music, art, clothing, language, you know, style.
Yep. Customs.
And by style I mean like hairstyles and like different things like that.
Oh, they've got some hair. They've got some styles.
Yeah. Head rope.
Yeah, head rope. Head rope has been fashionable for about 10,000 years in Chandrilla. Maybe longer.
It's an enormous amount of work that goes into it, and honestly, like that's really all it is it's a tried and true formula. It happens to exist in the Star Wars universe, so for people like us, we're obviously going to enjoy it on an entirely different level. And I do want to get into some of that specifically, especially since you and I have been listening to the novelization of Revenge of the Sith,
which is so
which is amazing, and there's so many things that like directly connect to the show. It's actually crazy,
right?
But even beyond that, it's just an extremely well-made like palace intrigue, and I think that's what can get everybody on board.
It seems like they're taking their time. So it's so funny. We need to be careful what we ask for, because in the past we've always bitched about how short episodes are related to Star Wars content and how we want more and more and more. And now we get 3 almost 1 hour long episode just dropped in our lap, and that's going to happen every single week now, which I'm super excited for, but it's hard to cover. It's hard to cram that. Like, I had watched 2 episodes last night after the family went to bed, and I got up early and watched the other episode before my kids got up. That way I could do like dad duty stuff.
Yeah,
you know what
it's
I mean?
hard to fit that much time
It's
in.
hard, but it is kind of fun, like, the house is quiet, you're drinking coffee, watching Star Wars, so it's still memorable, it's still cool. But it seems like they're really taking their time. There's even small little scenes tucked in there that don't have to be in there, but it makes it feel like a more complete piece of artwork almost. Like, for example, when Cassian goes into the TIE fighter and he's like, where is it? And he can't find his seat. And he turns the TIE fighter on and the seat like goes up behind him. And that was just such an amazing little touch. And they're doing that everywhere, with a lot of the conversations that a lot of the characters are having. They're not entirely necessary each time, but it just helps kind of create this nice simmer, this nice boil of an episode. And I'm really enjoying that because previous episodes with Star Wars in general felt very rushed.
Oh yeah, the Acolyte felt rushed.
The Acolyte felt very, very
let's
rushed.
do 17 different scenes and scapes within 2 episodes to try to explain this.
Well, and it makes sense. I feel like you get a little bit more bang for your buck. You spend all this time creating a beautiful scene, which in this case would be a TIE fighter. Use it. Get a lot of footage from that, and just like little bits and pieces like that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think even like little examples like them building out Mon Mothma's relationship with her daughter, which was something they started in season 1. They kind of started to build out the fact that like this has been one of the big things that has been abundantly clear right off of the top from this show, which is like the rebellion inherently leads to secrecy and like paranoia.
And for sure.
This dates back, and like this is going to be our first touch to the Revenge of the Sith novelization. And we're not going to talk Revenge of the Sith novelization today. We're going to save that because we have lots of time to cover that after Andor is finished. But like we will periodically touch back to it because it's literally the piece of material that came out before all of this, right? And one of the things specifically that I saw in the book was this scene where essentially it's Bail Organa, Mon Mothma, Padme Amidala, and 2 or 3 other senators. It's like I think it's 5 total. It's Bail and 4 other senators, and it's basically the early formation of the resistance against the Empire. And there were 2 very important things that came out of that. One I want to come back to later, which is like just how much power Palpatine had already amassed well before Order 66, well before any of that, like where he was effectively at that point in time. The second piece of it was they straight up like admit in that moment, in that meeting, like we can never tell anyone about this, not even our families.
Because they know how dangerous it is.
Exactly.
Right.
And so what that inherently leads to is like there is a little like I don't think Mon Mothma was having a sexual relationship with Taekoma. I think what happened is she's being secretive because she's funding a rebellion.
Right.
And her husband
Perrin
sees her talking to Taekoma a lot and canoodling and doing this stuff. And Mon Mothma is generally secretive and clearly hiding like an alter ego from her family.
Right.
And it's resulting in the husband being jealous and making cutting remarks about how she might be cheating on him.
He really went right in on that.
Oh,
I was surprised. He was very outright, and he's like essentially accused her of cheating on him.
Yeah.
Which I don't blame him.
Like straight up put her on the spot about it.
Right.
And then the daughter, going back to season 1, same sort of thing. Like, okay, if you're going to live a double life that involves you being a senator, but also like the secret leader of a resistance movement, that's going to lead to you not being as available as a mother.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and it's already hard as a senator. Like, let's be real. That'd be a really shitty job to have. It'd be hard to be a family man, or in this case, a family woman. And, and then on top of that, leading this double life where you're dealing with really intense people like Luthen on a regular basis, which would be so incredibly draining. Luthen's dope. Don't get me wrong. But could you imagine like what you'd feel like after talking to that man?
Oh my God, dude. Like
it's so intense.
But like, it's so funny because Luthen and Cassian both capture this, and then Luthen's inner circle, Luthen's like group of the women that work for him.
Yeah.
So like this is where I'm going to go back to the other piece of the Revenge of the Sith novelization. So they make it very clear in the Revenge of the Sith novel several like specific things about the movie, but one of the things that I want to focus on today is just how much the Galactic Republic had degraded before Order 66.
Right.
They straight up say in the book that, one, Palpatine had already installed governors on all Republic planets.
Yeah.
While it was still the Republic, he had already circumvented the Senate by installing military governors
You think
over
of like
every
Governor
single system.
Price,
Exactly, like that sort
people
of
like
thing.
that.
Essentially just meaning the Senate would theoretically represent these systems in a congressional meeting where they would be able to pass legislature for the Republic. But what Palpatine did was basically use military powers, or like the fear of things like an invasion of Coruscant, all these like
Right.
different things. He used these things to slowly basically turn over the power dynamics so that he had like the ability to search and seize anything. He was able to install these military governors on all these different planets.
He was doing random audits on farming communities.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's my point is like when we fast forward to the Empire, it's the extended, more dramatic version of that. But the point is like these people have been for decades at this point, at the time of Andor, being basically stomped into the mud by an authoritarian regime.
Right.
And I thought it was really fascinating just in that Revenge of the Sith novelization, just how they kind of explained the specific ways that Palpatine had amassed power. Like even more specifically, they don't even talk about this in the movie Revenge of the Sith, but Palpatine used the Senate to ratify an amendment that gave him direct control over the Jedi Council.
Yeah,
which was how he put Anakin on the Jedi Council. And like again,
Right.
I don't want to go any further into that because I want to do a whole pod on the Revenge of the Sith novelization after we get through Andor. But I say all that to set the stage basically for this is an authoritarian regime that has been stomping people into the mud for decades. And as you can tell throughout all the different scenes that they try to show you, the Imperial thumb is on everything.
Right.
And so what it ends up doing is it leads to the situation that breeds the paranoia. And so for Cassian, it's so funny because Cassian's literally like telling the group of rebels that are on this planet.
That was such a funny scene.
Oh, I laughed so many times
so
at that
ridiculous.
group of rebels. But like Cassian literally says, like, you guys are all on the same side. But then they're like, well, who do you work for? He's like, I'm not telling you.
Right.
And like Luthen, same thing. Like,
Right.
could you tell easily that Luthen was going to kill the hell out of like just murder Take Homa? Like, was
Yes.
that
Oh, we
obvious?
know that's going
Yeah,
down. Like,
yeah.
I'm sure it's the first thing we see next episode.
Yeah.
Right,
Or
but-
it's implied.
Even Luthen and Saw's conversation during season 1, after they had done that heist, right, and stolen all that gold.
Or they let that guy die.
Yeah, Luthen goes and talks to Saw, and Luthen's like, "Was that you?" Luthen didn't even want to take credit for it, even though he had just done it.
Yeah.
And Saw's like, "That is what someone would say who had just done the heist," you know. And then
And
Luthen,
Saw's so paranoid.
right?
In
Saw
all of
is
his
the
appearances.
most paranoid guy. Yeah, and then Luthen's like, "Well, that's what someone would say about someone saying it." Almost like they had that weird dialogue together. You're exactly right. There's so much paranoia to the point where even factions of these rebel cells turned on each other because they had like bad leadership and poor communication with each other. That was such a wild scene. The idea when they were trying to turn the TIE fighter on their friends so they could shoot them was wild.
Yeah, it was so funny.
And then it was so
You guys
smart.
are gonna starve before you finish.
and then they have to shoot like 3 blaster bolts to their way, and then they have to hide and
Like
they have to stop.
disperse,
Yeah,
yeah.
they can't do anymore. That's so funny.
But dude, it is like drawn back to that authoritarianism though, because like
Yeah.
they make it clear like on Chandrilla, the Luthen and his team are like, we can't send transmissions from here. The
Right.
Empire's monitoring everything out here. You know, like they're all of them are constantly paranoid about whether or not the Empire is going to show up at any minute, whether or not
Right.
the Empire is listening. And that's what literally breeds that paranoia that causes that problem. But like, I think that I say all of that we just went through in the last 5 minutes to basically explain or to express that like the show does a great job of laying the groundwork for what it would look like in this authoritarian regime to just be like a citizen.
Oh,
To like
they make it look
to
like
what
it
it's like
sucks.
to live under these circumstances, and like
Yeah.
the little things like you see people who are in love getting separated. You see, I thought that scene where the one dude goes up to who's the guy who died at the end? Brazos. He goes up to Brazos and is like, please, can you tell everyone what's happening here? And Brazos is like, this is happening everywhere.
Right.
Man.
Yeah. They're like, you need to get the word out that this is happening. And Brazos is like, yeah, this is no new news. The younger guy, Willman, I think is his name, who leaves with Cassian and Bix at the very end. In season 1, his dad gets killed in front of him. And then so he loses his father, right? And then on top of that, he has this love interest with some gal on the planet that he's finally making home.
And now he had to leave her.
And then the Empire shows up.
Yep.
Right. And he's seen all of these people just get killed around him just as a result of just being around the Empire. That's literally all they're doing. They're not smuggling drugs. They're not actively fighting them in most cases. They're literally just existing, and the Empire doesn't want them there. It's absolutely wild.
Dude, and I thought the final scene of the final episode where Mon Mothma is just getting shwasted on the dance floor.
Oh my gosh.
And
drinking her troubles away.
Oh yeah. And and it was kind of cool, like juxtaposed with Cassian, where you're basically seeing Cassian, his hatred for the Empire building to like a breaking point because another one of his friends has died.
Right.
Mon Mothma basically just got told by Luthen that part where where he's like, how nice for you that you don't get to know, like how nice for you that you don't have to think about the fact that I have to murder this dude.
Right.
And but Mon Mothma's clearly just super emotional and super drunk on the dance floor, but she's just dancing it away. But you can tell deep down, she's like devastated by this whole situation because her high school friend as a child, that she got him mixed up in all of this. And now he has to die, looking at the beginning of Rogue One when Cassian has to kill that dude in the alleyway. Like there's just so much sacrifice that has to happen in order to make this all work. Mon Mothma even having to have that moment with her daughter where she tries to come through for her daughter right before the wedding, and then the daughter puts her in her place again. Right. I loved Mon Mothma's reaction where she's like, fine, I'm going to put you in your place. Now get behind me.
Right. Two things on that. Number one, the idea that in order to have a successful rebellion against the Empire, you have to play with the Empire's rules. So the idea of rebels having to kill rebels in order to continue their cause is absolutely wild. And it's a recurring theme that we see over and over and over again. And Mon is slowly becoming more and more okay with that, which is interesting to see. The other thing on a point that you brought up, what did you think about the conversation between Mon and her daughter? Was that a cool conversation for her to have, or was that a really bad one in your case? Because I see it from both sides.
I think the decision, not to go off the rails here, but I think the decision about who you're going to marry is arguably the most important decision that any human being will ever make in their life. I have a brother-in-law. There was a moment where Matt told me once, my brother-in-law, he was like, yeah, I feel like you should go up to your loved ones when they're about to get married and be like, hey, remind them, like, hey, you don't have to do this. Like, even though everyone's here, even though all the gifts are here, even though people flew out, you can still say no. And not because you're trying to talk them into not doing it, but almost as just like a reminder that like, this is the biggest and most important decision you will make in your life. Are you sure?
Yeah.
I mean, for a while,
it's a good sobering moment.
Yeah.
It really is.
For a while, a traditional, I have never actually seen this in a wedding, but I've seen it in the movies when they were like, if anybody here has any sort of issue for why these two should not
opposition
be together,
or whatever,
objections. Yeah. But I didn't necessarily think that's what Mon Mothma was doing. I actually thought Mon Mothma was leaning more towards like, this guy's a scumbag, the dad of the dude she's marrying.
Skolden, I think.
Skolden, yeah. He's a scumbag. This is going to put you in a really tough spot for the rest of your life. Are you sure you want to do this?
I know.
I thought it was a little bit more along those lines.
So I thought so too. And I get that. Mon's just looking out for her daughter. And if you think about it, her daughter might be the only actual close, real, authentic relationship that she has. Because she obviously doesn't have that with Perrin, right? And she obviously doesn't have that with Tay anymore. But Mon's the one that put her into this position. You know what I mean? It's one thing if your son or daughter is about to marry someone that they're choosing to marry, and it's one thing to go up to them and say, hey, are you sure? Actually, Dr. Carrington, one of my mentors through college, had that conversation with both Elena and I together. in the same
shit.
room.
Okay, yeah.
And it was like
It's
way
sobering,
before
though.
that. It was
Yeah,
sobering. It was like
yeah.
months beforehand, but she knew we were getting married. And she's like, are you sure? And then she's like, well, what does this look like? When she was asking me about like our faith and stuff like that, she's like, well, what does that look like? And what does this look like? I thought it was cool. I thought it was very endearing because she cared a lot, you know. But Mon's the one that put her in this position, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's a little tough if all of a sudden Mon's like, hey, are you sure you want to do this? Like, what does it look like if she says no, Mon?
No,
What does it look
exactly.
like?
And you can imagine how that would have probably been a factor in the way that the daughter reacted.
Yeah.
Because she knows that fact. But like, it almost felt like a good amount of regret for Mon Mothma because it's like she initiated this. Now her daughter has to marry this scumbag. Her childhood friend is going to probably end up dying. Like it ends up just being this like she just looked super regretful. And
She
like,
did. That was a powerful
I loved the
scene.
line from Luthen where
was
he
a
was
beautiful
like,
scene.
where he was like, you know, she was like, I've just known him since childhood. I just can't believe it. And then Luthen's like, people fail.
People fail.
That's our biggest weakness. You know, we will fail. And like, and that's the thing is like you go back to season 1. He's like, oh, you know, like my opinions are radical. Like I'm anti-empire, blah, blah, blah. Just seemed like a normal guy that could help Mon Mothma.
Right.
But it's like all of a sudden his life decomposes over a few bad business deals. Now all of a sudden he's in desperate need of money. He's in a situation where he's willing to go some
Right.
nefarious routes to get it. And he's a drunk, and like, and his wife has left him. It's
His
like
wife left
he's
him.
all
Yeah.
all of a sudden he's in this situation where it becomes a massive risk.
I was proud of Star Wars for putting that in there. You know, that was very unlike Star Wars, typical, you know, traditional Star Wars writing. I thought that was so cool that they added that in there. That kind of felt more along lines of like an HBO type move, and I was very proud of them for that.
Yeah, it was great. Are we missing any major storylines? So we talked a little bit about
Let me see.
the freighter. I thought it was interesting. They didn't actually clarify this, but it looked like they either lied to Cassian about the type of ship he was going to get, because he was like, "This is not the ship I was trying to fly. This is not. It's not a freighter either. Like it's like it very much felt like to me. So it looked a little bit like vaguely similar to a TIE Advanced.
Right. Yeah.
My
for sure.
guess is it was just one of the prototypes of the TIE Advanced, because the TIE Advanced is what Darth Vader flies in A New
Sharp
Hope.
front.
Yep, it's got like a much larger fuselage, like a much larger cabin.
It had seating in the back
Yep.
of it.
It had some freighter like qualities in the sense that it had like
very
more
large
space.
missiles on it as well.
But it had like a ton of firepower on it, like just
ton.
an insane amount of
Unlimited.
firepower on it. So it was kind of like almost like a mix between like a TIE bomber and a TIE Advanced.
Obviously,
kinda
it
like
had a
vibe.
hyperdrive as well.
Yep, it had a hyperdrive, it had
Um,
weird piloting.
That was cool.
Configuration.
I thought
Yeah.
it was great that they didn't make Cassian just jump into it and fly off.
Yeah,
I
oh,
love
yeah.
the fact that they developed a scene where he's literally like a pinball inside of the hangar bay, and he's just bouncing the TIE fighter around.
That
and
scene
every
was a
time it
great
hits-
way to start the show.
It was, yeah. The first thing that you see is this dark hangar bay, and then the lights get turned
That
on,
was
and then
so
this woman
cool.
walks, and it's like so austere and so clean, and this woman's in this like jumpsuit that's like very piloty, scientific looking, and she just walks through, and it's like almost silent. It was the coolest way to start a Star Wars series, you know. And I just thought it was great that they made it difficult for him to fly it. And then that one scene where the really big, burly, he was like a tank trooper almost, but like he had like the white helmet on. He had his rocket launcher.
Oh yeah,
and they're having the standoff, and
he just
Cassian
barely
can't
misses.
Cassian can't figure out how to shoot him, and they're just looking at each other. Like that was hilarious.
That the entire action sequence there was like the perfect like oh, we're sitting down to watch Star Wars. It's going to be palace intrigue. No, it's not. We're going to throw a good action
Right.
scene just to get you quickly engaged.
Yeah.
I did like the scene with Cassian and the girl who helped him, where it's clearly her first rebel act.
Yeah.
And they clearly had never met each other.
Oh,
and
right.
She like didn't want to make eye contact. She's super nervous,
Right.
and she's doing all these things.
She was sad
And
that she was
Cassian
leaving
did
her friends
a really
behind.
nice job comforting her. And like one of the things that
Yeah, that was
Cassian
nice.
said that I thought was super interesting was when he basically just goes like, she goes, "I'm super nervous," and he's like, "That's good.
Yeah.
It'll keep you awake, and we
Right.
need to be awake for
Yeah.
this." It all just was, and then she starts talking about whether or not it's worth it, and like all that kind of stuff, and it just. The show started off on a great note with that scene. I thought it just kind of captured a little bit of like the vibe of what it's like being a rebel in an authoritarian regime, but also
Yeah.
just like nice action to get everybody immediately invested. I am curious. the specific dynamic of the conversation that do you have the name by any chance for Luthen's assistant, the one that works in the okay.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about though.
She basically, just think of the lady who's always on the comms.
Comm lady.
Comm lady.
Tight bun comm lady. Very serious.
So she basically is having the conversation with Cassian over comms, and Cassian is like, this is not the ship I was expecting. This was supposed to be a freighter, but it's clearly like this highly advanced starfighter. So I'm actually really curious to see if that ends up being something that plays a role in the next 3 episodes that come out, because it's too big of like a lead up for them to just drop it dead there.
For sure. 2 things really quick. Number one, I saw this really cool interview, and it was about George Lucas and in A New Hope, how dissatisfied he was with Luke Skywalker's speeder, and how he thought it was so lame because it would bounce kind of irregularly as it drove on the ground, and it was very clear that it was just this like prop on wheels that people were sitting and driving
But
around.
it made for great visuals, though.
It made for great visuals.
The shot where the camera's with him while he's moving was such a great shot.
So they leaned heavily into that on the farming planet with the troop transport. It was very clear that they had done the exact same technology. And I almost feel like that was a nice tip of the hat to George Lucas, almost, where they kept practical effects the way that they have always been in Star Wars.
They just hit. They hit in Star Wars.
Yeah,
man.
they hit. So that was a beautiful touch. The other storyline that we briefly need to talk about before we go is Sirill and Dedra.
Ah, yes.
And it's their
They're
the
together
relationship.
now.
They're together. Happy
Shout
for
out
them.
to Sirill, locking down Dedra.
I know, right? They're perfect for each other. Number one.
Yeah.
It was interesting to see Dedra, or however you say her name, like actually have like even the smallest level of warmth, which she did, and the acting in that was incredible. I thought.
Would she let out the smile in front of the mirror? That was hilarious.
That was so funny. And then the mom scene where she's just super frank with the mom, who was just being really difficult to Sirill. I thought that was such a great scene.
That scene was crazy. That was like all right, it's time to stop fucking around.
Right.
I need you to understand how this dynamic is going to work.
Sirill's just on the bed, just
our
passed
time
out.
spent together will be inversely proportional to how much anxiety you cause in our lives.
I know.
Just like, holy
so
shit.
interesting. I know. So interesting. And just the idea of someone willing to sell their soul in order to have what they think is a desirable life on Coruscant. You know, she's absolutely miserable. Sirill seems miserable as well, but they have this great penthouse, and that's all that matters, right? They're well-dressed and have a nice penthouse, which is the dream for any Coruscanti.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So
and they're not down in the lower levels anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. So I thought that was just really interesting, and the whole entire Krennic scene where they're talking about the lead up into the what's the term? I can't remember what planet they're about to go and try and take over with the spider silk.
Okay, so this is actually an important.
It's huge. It's wildly important.
Yeah, this is Gorman.
Gorman. Yeah, I can't believe I forgot the name of that.
There's been reference. Now I can't remember where exactly it came from, but there has been like a reference to a specific Gorman massacre.
Right.
That was basically the tipping point for the start of like a more active, open rebellion, galaxy-wide rebellion.
I think it's the catalyst for why Mon leaves officially.
Yes, exactly. And she rips apparently she like rips Palpatine a new one on the Senate floor.
Yeah.
And then that's when she has to disappear and be a secret rebel.
Right.
And so that has existed in Star Wars long before, if I'm not mistaken, long before any of this. And so now they're actually finally flushing out that story. I thought that was actually super fascinating because one, we get to this very interesting cabinet meeting that's like top secret, and it's in reference to Gorman and this material they want. But like, we know, this is the dramatic irony, we know that Krennic is actually in charge of a different project called the Stardust Project, which is the Death Star. But it's being portrayed that he's like, the Empire is interested in energy independence. And in order for energy independence, we need this material from Gorman. And
right.
I don't know if that's actually what Krennic's project is, or if it has to be a lie. No, because we know the Death Star shows up.
The Death Star, right?
Yeah.
Having this unlimited energy that's apparently like renewable or something like that is
I think it's
wildly important.
Yeah. I think it's all a cover. I think my take right now is that the whole Gorman thing is actually, they're not getting something for energy independence. They're getting something to help finish construction of the Death Star.
And what's so interesting is both sides are about to use this, right?
Yeah.
So the Empire's trying to gain, power and wealth through this like metal, right? And then the rebels are about to use this as a catalyst for the galaxy. So
did you hear them talk about gouge mining? That was intense.
Oh yeah.
So every once in a while there'll be like I get into like really weird like astrophysics stuff on Instagram sometimes, and like I'll see this video and it'll be like, this is what it looked like. This is a simulation of what it looked like when this object ran into the Earth that became the moon. And so you see like the Earth and this object like slams into it, and when it slams into it, like the entire Earth's surface becomes molten lava. Because like it's basically essentially the way it appears visually is that the Earth is actually like this giant. Think of it as like if you suspended a drop of water in space, like if you shot like a squirt gun in space, like eventually the bits of water would turn into these like perfectly spherical drops that are just sitting there in space, in the vacuum of space. Similarly, the lava of Earth is like just sitting in this like spherical shape, and then what happens is the outer portion of it cools and becomes crust, which is where we get our plate tectonics and everything. But like when something slams into the Earth, it like can basically disrupt that and turn it into another lava blob, right? And then essentially all of those little blobs like got attached to through their gravitational pull to what turned into the moon and what turned into Earth. So what I've envisioned when they were explaining the gouge mining is like them basically digging so deep into the crust that it essentially destabilizes the planet entirely. And like, and they're like, how many Gormans live there? Like 800,000. So it's like they literally all have to be relocated or killed.
Right.
Like that's the
and they're trying to decide like, what are we going to do? Are we going to relocate or kill them? Like we could have an accident happen.
And then they have the propaganda guys step up. Did you see that?
That was nauseating. That I couldn't help but to reminisce and Fallout. With that scene. It felt very Fallout-esque with all the propaganda. And
the final scene when they're at the big table in Fallout. I remember that. Yeah.
Super reminiscent of Fallout. But
yeah, that whole dynamic is super fascinating because I think that's what they're teeing up for the next 3 episode cycle. Is specifically the idea of the Gorman massacre then leading into something having to do with Stardust. Dedra has this really interesting conversation with director Krennic. And it was cool in the sense that director Krennic is painted as a guy that clearly has a large ego. But in everything, in Rogue One, in the books, the Thrawn books, in this show, he's depicted as incredibly intelligent and manipulative and kind of like a master of like creating his own destiny, so to speak. And I thought it was really interesting that he singled Dedra out of that room and was like, I know you have an opinion. Yeah. Let's hear it. And then next thing you know, she's getting the job.
He's definitely very wise, and the people around him respect him for that. Like I think of Ronan from the books.
Yeah.
Who is an absolute a-hole,
Assistant Director Ronan.
Yeah, he was a tough listen. Yeah. But he loved Krennic, and obviously Ronan was good at what he did too. So Krennic is one of those leaders that is down to get input from the people around him, which is a nice quality for a leader for sure.
I hope that they spend a little bit more time fleshing out like some of the secrecy behind Stardust and diving into that specifically.
Yeah, I think they will.
I think it would be incredible if we saw a cameo of Vader or Palpatine. I think but there's been a credit for Vader, so I think he's going to show up.
I would be so down.
I am just incredibly excited. I'm so excited that we get 9 more episodes at this like 45 to 50 minute length. It feels like we're getting 4 Star Wars movies here.
I know.
And we just got the first one. It was great. Do you have any other thoughts before we call it a day?
That's it.
That's all we have for today, guys. As always, I sincerely appreciate you guys for rocking with us and supporting the show. We'll be back probably right around this time on Wednesday next week for episodes 4 through 6. We will see you guys then.
Thanks a lot.